Oh, hey, come on in. Let's talk about pocket knives. All right, I got another project knife I'm starting here. It is a Schrade 124 OT. I picked this up at a pawn shop recently. Very good price on it because the blade is broken. Of course, it's a single blade with the little lock back in it. And someone had ground around on the handles. They sanded around or cut around on those. It's odd. So except for the blade and the handles, it's a great knife. But of course, being a sucker for a poor old broken knife, I just had to see if I could do something with it. So thanks for joining me on this. We'll see you. Now, I'm not going to keep these handles. They're in too rough shape. But I am taking my time in the grinding and the drilling, making sure I can take that pin out without destroying the handles, just because it's good practice. And whenever you get one like this that you're not going to keep the handles, there's no parts off of them you can use other than that shield. Yeah, take some time to practice, refine your skills, get a little better at taking one apart. Well, in trying to select handle material, I've got some bone that I really like. This was purchased from Culpeppers online, and they have really, really good selection of handle materials. Both of these are just borderline the correct length. They may be a hair short, so I may have to put a spacer in one end or both. This one, the package was damaged enough. I couldn't read the name on it. I've owned it for several years. It's been a few years since I placed an order with them, and but it's kind of crimson colored bone. Nice little jigging pattern. I forget the name of that pattern. It kind of reminds me of their American pattern jigging. This yellow is the same length. So if I use it, I would have to use a spacer as well. So I'm thinking to go ahead and do my handles, be letting that glue dry, and then come back and work on the blade and clean everything up. So that's my thought process. Man, I like both of these colors. I may go with the yellow. It's a little wider. It would fit a bigger knife where this one wouldn't. Yeah, I'm going to save that in case I come up with a wider bladed knife that I needed on. I'll go with the crimson. All right, very good. I will begin by grinding off these handle pins to remove the damaged handle scales. Then I'll remove and keep that original shield. Now the second order of business is going to be to rough sand these handle liners just to clean them up in preparation to glue them. Surprisingly now, these bone pieces are just a hair too long to fit into these handles. They had appeared to be too short before when you just held it up and looked at it, but it looks like I'll have to sand just a tiny bit off one or both ends to fit these. That part is certainly going to be less work than what I had expected, so pleasant surprise. I'm using a worn 400 grit belt, so this takes a bit longer than it probably had to. I just don't want to use something more aggressive and shorten the scales too much, so remember, slow and steady wins the race. Here I'm mixing a little bit of black paint into the red to tint that glue in an effort to match the handles. I decided to mix the paint first before I add it to the glue. I was not really very confident in this color combination, but it turned out to be a pretty good match. While we give that glue time to cure for the handles, I'm going to go ahead and begin replacing this blade. If you've watched my channel for very long, you know what I'm doing here. I'm making a replacement Swindon rivet for the blade. I like to use this flaring clamp to hold the pin as I make a head on one side before I begin putting it into the knife frame. Now I will assemble the knife, inserting 2 feeler gauges that equal 0.058 inches, or 58 thousandths of an inch, or if you prefer, it's 1.45 millimeters. I'll put that in there to get the spacing right as I peen the other head onto the rivet. Here I'm drilling 1/16 inch holes into the scales for handle pins. And then, since the drill's in my hand, I'll switch over to a larger bit and drill out for the pivot pins. I believe it's a number 42 drill bit. Normally I like to peen my pins before I do the rough contouring of the handles, just because that gives some added strength to hold those scales onto the handle liners. But I think I just got too eager here and did the rough contouring first. But luckily there were no problems with the handles, and in just minutes I had them contoured, hafted, and the edges rounded somewhat. Now I'll pin the handle scales using my authentic Schrade USA made handle pins. They can come in handy sometimes. You can see from this angle that hafting and rounding the edges of these bone slabs really brings out the beauty in them. Culpeppers uses dye that remains very dark on the outside of jigged bone, but sanding off a little bit at the edges begins to reveal that warm, beautiful variation of colors hidden underneath. I'm going to take a few minutes to clean up the handle liners and the center liner before I assemble the knife. Now it's time to make my mark on the world, or at least put my mark on this one knife. After studying the knife and giving it some thought, I've decided to inlet a shield onto the mark side handle. It always gives me pause because at this point I have an already beautiful handle and I have to wonder if adding a shield is worth the risk of permanently damaging that handle scale. I've decided to risk it on this one, so I'll mark my center line to keep the shield straight and then mark for the shield itself. I apologize for getting the top of my head into the frame. I keep having to lean in close to see that fine detail. But at least you all get the chance to see how beautiful my hair is. I mean, I'm rather proud to have this much of it at my age. I'm switching out to a small cylinder bit or drum bit, which is flat on the end, and that lets me smooth out the edges of the inlet and flatten the bottom of it. Oh, this part always gets me excited. Let's assemble the knife, check it out, and see how everything's going to work. I enjoy how easy it is to reassemble a Schrade knife. You just clip those handles into place onto the rivets, compress the springs, and insert one pin. It's awesome. Hey, everything checks out. Let's peen that center pin, and we are one step closer to having a finished knife. The handles keep wanting to spread apart in the middle, leaving gaps around the spring. If you'll notice, I'm clamping down as hard as I can with my thumb as I file down this pin, and then later again as I peen it. Otherwise, the pin will be too long and the gaps will remain. I just realized my finish sanding is going to be a little more difficult as the liner lock sticks up beside the blade well and there's no way to sand that whole area on the belt sander now that the knife has been assembled. I'll sand the parts that I can reach and then I'll finish up the rest of it by hand sanding them. There are several scratches along the end of the knife and rust pits all along that back spring. I'll work on these areas especially, eventually moving down to a 120 grit belt for that back spring. Now I'm back to the 400 grit belt to smooth things up some. Even though I did not have to pin these bolsters like I do on some knives, I am having to sand away several scratches and gouges. This knife has led a difficult life, which, if you think about it, all of us have, haven't we? We've gone through some things and carried scars from it, and the Lord will take care of those. He'll smooth those out if you'll allow Him, but He's got to remove some things to do it, just like I do on this knife. So, hey, remember, place your life in His hands, find joy and satisfaction in His work. Now I'll sand the edges near the blade well and my transitions near the bolster as well. You'll see me use another knife to scrape away bits of glue as I work, and wiping away the bone dust with a damp rag, which helps me to see the imperfections that I need to address. Now I'm switching over to a piece of 400 grit sandpaper to smooth away the areas that I've just sanded. Hand sanding does not leave scratches that are as deep or as uniform as those from a belt sander, but you still need to smooth them out. They're still there, and we need to get rid of those before we try to polish the knife. Yes, this one tiny drop of glue should be more than enough to fasten the shield into place. Now, these Schrade shields are thinner than some others out there, and it skates around in the glue as I try to wipe off the excess. I try pressing it into place using my vise, trying to set it deeply into that inlet cut and push out all the excess glue that's behind it so that it'll stay, but I wind up just wiping away all the excess and clamping it on with one of my spring clamps because it refuses to stay otherwise. right, YouTube. Well, here I am. I've got a Band-Aid on my finger. I cut my pinky earlier. It was not on knives. It was in setting up the camera equipment. So who knew that being a superstar was such a dangerous business? But here we are with the Schrade Old Timer single blade lock back single blade with a liner lock. And man, I love how this knife turned out. That bone from Culpeper's is gorgeous. I mean, it turned out just right. We put the original shield back in it. I have brand new shields. I could have put a new one, but I just wanted to keep that old one. Still a few scratches visible on it after polishing, but nothing to worry about. As I said, this knife just turned out gorgeous. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the liner locks because I'm used to just coming up and closing my knives, and I forget to push on the liner lock sometimes. And as well, when the blade is closed, the blade is pushing over to the side. That's because the liner lock is constantly putting pressure on it. It's not that the blade is warped or anything else about the knife. You can have it perfectly centered, except when the liner lock is there, it's going to push on it and make it off-centered. It's just physics. It's going to have to work that way. I didn't sharpen this one very well, and I need to put another edge on it before I do anything else with the knife. But I've carried it some. I've really enjoyed it. I guess my biggest regret is that the replacement blades I have are blank. It doesn't say Schrade. It doesn't say anything on it. But this is an actual Schrade blade. Came from their factory for Schrade USA. And it fits the knife perfectly. I don't know if it was intended for this knife or for another model, maybe some special factory orders where they didn't have the Schrade name on them. We don't know what it was originally designed for, but it works perfectly in this, and we're back to having an authentic Schrade knife again with the Culpeper bone handles, beautiful. Has a little variation in color on this one. Now, I didn't know that until we had it on there and started sanding it. So it was just luck that this handle did not, or this scale did not wind up being on the front. Because that's the wonderful thing about these, when when it's dark with the dye, you don't know what's underneath. And until you start sanding on it, you can't reveal the beauty of these. They just looked kind of uniform in color, kind of a dull crimson. Until you get to sanding on it, polishing on it, and then it brings out the beauty of those handles. And this one is unique and gorgeous. Very pleased with it. There's really not any negatives about this knife that I don't like, other than the fact that I just personally don't like a liner lock. But I left it in there. Again, it's back to having a second chance at life, and this knife needed it. If you recall, the handles were bad, the blade was broken, there was nothing usable about the knife. Now we got it ready to go back into service and go in somebody's pocket. I'll probably put this one in my online store. And since I finished this one, I've also finished another. If you've seen the yard sale haul, there's another one of these in that. I've already finished it, so that video will be coming up soon. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you so much. I hope you have a blessed day, and we'll talk to you next time. Goodbye.